All right, welcome back to episode 2 of my Draconian Necromancer series, where I have pre-selected 5 Emperor level AI opponents to face off against, and they have been selected to be some of the hardest race class combination and specialization users that provide excellent counters to who I am as a Draconian Necromancer. And the key feature of this video series is that I'm going to do nothing for the first 40 turns of this map. I'm going to let my AI opponents expand and do whatever they want to do. I'm going to sit in my base. I won't upgrade my heroes. I'll allow research skills to do their thing, because you can't move to the next turn until you select a new skill to research, and I will have a small amount of knowledge each turn. I won't summon anything, so I won't be using casting points. If somebody attacks me, I will defend myself. And when I level up heroes, I will not invest those points until turn 40. So I'm basically trying to do as little as possible until turn 40 to really give my opponents a head start. I have no idea if I can pull off this victory, but we're going to try it. So this video is going to be boring, because I'm just going to be trying to get to turn 40 and cycling through turn after turn after turn. And it's going to be slow. I'm posting it to YouTube just so that there's proof that I waited till turn 40. But if you're here for the good stuff, you'll want to go to the next episode in the series, where I'll clearly label in the title, because I don't know if it'll be episode 3. It really depends on how long this shtick takes. But I'll clearly post in the title what is the first video where I hit turn 40 and actually start to do interesting things. So let's get started with this episode 2. I need to select a research skill. It's not going to matter too terribly much what I'm researching. Do I have a shrine? So I do have a mana node in here. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so I won't mind the casting points, so we'll start there. There's nothing else I'm doing. Again, if you saw the previous video, I did accept the first offer of a hero, and this will be the only hero that I will ever accept for the entirety of the game. I am allowing myself, well, I can't recruit any more heroes after this, so I'm going to be stuck with these 2 for the longest period of time. Oh, I should say too that I'm just going to keep it on produce merchandise. I'm not going to allow myself to build any units. This is going to, because it's classic turns, because I don't want to simultaneous turns, you can cheese the opponent, and I don't want to allow myself that ability, so unfortunately it will make turns go a bit slower, since we have to wait, and especially once you get into like turn 15 and beyond, these allied Emperor level AIs can take a while to complete their turns. But okay, moving right along, keeping it going. What was I gonna say before? I don't know what I was gonna say before, but we have plenty of time ahead of us here. If you're still with me, still watching, I'm sure it will come to me, the thing that I was trying to say. The last series that I did, I waited for 20 turns and was still able to pull out the victory, though it was definitely a lot more challenging, because I had to do a lot of late game battles, because they had gotten up to pretty good strength by the time I got to their side of the map and was starting to take them out. It was pretty dicey there for a bit, but ultimately was able to handle it. But 40 turns being double that, I don't know. It's going to be pretty crazy. I'm not pleased with the halfling for a number of reasons. One is that they hate the volcanic terrain that I start in. Okay, so I've got to select another research skill here. Vampiric Hunger will be helpful, but even more helpful will be the necromancy for the summoning, I think. So I'm going to stick with this, and then I do want to get this to Reanimator before I start going. That's something else. I want to be able to start producing Reanimators on turn 40 when I can start to build stuff. I want to be able to start summoning, and the key summoning thresholds are there's a few summons like Banshees take 90 casting points to summon, and so you want to be at least 50 casting points. You can do it in 2 turns, and I think I can get up to 50 casting points, maybe via research by the time turn 40 rolls around. So it would be nice to get at least level 3 of necromancy to so I can have those 50 casting points and can get Banshees in 2 turns. It also helps with Undead Plague. Actually, it would be nice to get up to 60. Same with this as well. So actually, if I could get up to 60 casting points, that might be a nice threshold. But I definitely have to prioritize. I absolutely need to make sure that I have Produce Reanimators done, and Vampiric Hunger would be super useful because I'm going to be using cadavers a lot, and they really benefit. They really tank up when you have that Vampiric Hunger. It just helps them hang on longer. I'm wondering if there's anything else. This I don't need till later. This will be nice to have from the start. I'm going to have a pretty good mana cushion because of 40 turns of this. So I probably don't need to rush this early. I probably don't need to rush a shrine early, so that's less of a priority. This is good to have as a nuke. Speaking of which, what are the spells? So good, Stiffen Limbs is the most important, and it's good we have that nuke there. And it's good we have double Stiffen Limbs is excellent. Stiffen Limbs is absolutely important. This, I'm never going to use Flamers. Shrine's cheaper, absolutely. Very valuable. We'll definitely utilize that. Yeah, so the Stiffen Limbs is excellent. Will really help with some tough battles early on. Will really help facilitate ghouling of tier 4 units who I need to keep super slow. And I guess with all this time that I'll have a chance to talk a little bit about the Steam guide that I created and some of the pieces with that. Shooting stars. Oh, hate that. I'm glad I'm doing nothing during shooting stars time because that is incredibly annoying. I'm also going to have a pretty nice gold cushion. So that's a consolation prize of doing nothing for the first 40 turns. What else do we need to talk about? So let's see. Looking here at my notes for my settings. Again, you can see that the starting army was weak. I don't mind having the ranged here. I would have loved to have an Elder or a Flyer, and I have neither of them, so that also sucks tremendously. Definitely go up to that. So yeah, which with weak starting army makes sense. So I'm just hoping that once I get these guys leveled up, that one of them will evolve into a Flyer, and the consolation prize would be an Elder, since they do excellent fire damage, and that pairs really nicely with all the Blight Frost heavy Black Bolt damage that I'm doing here. I need another channel to deal with certain opponents who are resistant to Frost and or Blight. Heroes offers to join. Again, I'm never going to accept hero offers to join, and I won't attack them for the experience. You know, the rest of the game, I'm not getting anybody else. Oh yeah, that reminds me of what I was going to come back around to before. So I'm going to have only these 2 heroes until the point when I can start ghouling enemy heroes that are non-leaders, because you can't ghoul their leader because they just go to the void instead of being able to be ghouled or converted or charmed. So I'm looking forward to that point. If my last video series was any indication, I think it was around turn 30-ish when I ghouled my first enemy hero. Because I generally, and I was in that, I don't care, is there a way to, not now, Stop bothering me, please. Yeah, in my last video series where I waited till turn 20, I started about here, and so I was able to go up and then east and do a loop and then go east. So I had kind of two main forces and some tertiary stuff underground. And so I was able to delay and build up my army strength through ghouling before I met the opponents on the battlefield. Because generally it's tough to mass ghoul the opponent's armies. When it's large battles, you're trying to keep your units alive. You don't necessarily have the leisure of setting up perfect ghouling. It's much easier when you're fighting independents with a maximum of 6 enemy units to set up ghouling. I don't care. I don't care. It's only on turn 12. 5 turns towards this. Man, turn 40 is forever ago. See, if we were doing turn 20, it would only be 8 turns from now. But this is slow. Oh, it looks like we're going to have independents attack us, and I will actually have to defend right before the start of my turn 13, I think. So, actually, a little bit of action, actually. Oh, nope, chickened out. Just a little domain invasion. They should come by, though. I wouldn't mind the experience. Because I'm definitely prioritizing. My priority for all of this is leveling these guys up. Leveling the heroes up is absolutely essential for this strategy. And they are definitely the most important units to get that level up action going for. What else do we need to talk about? I'm going to pull up my guide here in the other tab and see what I need to talk about. So, as is probably obvious, I'm playing with all of the DLC. I'm playing version 1.802. So it's got the Deluxe Edition, Golden Realms, and Eternal Lords, which, if you know about those expansions, Necromancer is a part of the last one, Eternal Lords. It's the only way to play with them. But I really love playing with them because, oh, look at that. Grew into a town. How nice. Actually, these turns aren't taking super long, but maybe it's just because I'm busy kind of providing commentary while we wait for this. What was I going to say? I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, so I like playing Necromancer because there's a lot of focus on perfectionist battle strategy, which as a kind of a perfectionist by nature is an indulgence of mine, where getting your stuff leveled up, not losing units early, and being really on point with your ghouling, being really consistent, so you're not passing up ghouling opportunities. That's very important for maximizing, especially if I'm putting myself at such a disadvantage by waiting to turn 40 and these other adjustments I've made. I need to find every advantage I can. But I like that combat is emphasized. Because empire management, can be interesting, and it can feel nice to build up a bunch of cities that are really nice and high production and whatever, but in some ways it just simplifies things, because with the cities that I do take, the focus is maybe building a shrine for a little bit of mana boost, maybe building an observatory, laboratory into observatory, to be able to get a little bit more research going. And I'm going to be really behind on research, actually, so it'll be super important for me catching up with my opponents to have that research cranking. It's interesting to think about. But I mean, so I will build shrine sometimes into temple, but a lot of times I just stick with shrine. Never build this. Never build this. I'll do this if I plan to build up the infrastructure in that city, which I don't tend to do unless I'm going to start going for Palaces of the Perished. But otherwise, I kind of skip these in favor of just doing the shrine and the observatory, even if it takes a little bit longer. I don't prefer to, get into the production stuff. Okay, so let's see. Just to be conservative, I'm going to do this because I'm at 50 now, so I can get the Banshee summoned in 2 turns with this much casting points because it costs 90. And hopefully I'll actually be able to do Lost Souls into Reanimators into Banshees. Maybe I can get Banshees done by turn 40. But I may have to choose between that and Vampiric Hunger. But especially if I'm just starting out with this force, if I can get a Banshee in there by my second turn of movement, that will be a big strength boost to this, especially with their physical protection. So that's probably a priority for me. Probably more than Vampiric Hunger. Yeah. And I also, with the golds I am absolutely going to be rushing all day because I don't mind spending the pop in the gold. So I'm going to be rushing Reanimators for the first 4 turns probably. So back to building stuff. So I don't tend to invest into here, except if in my cap or my second city I may do Builder's Hall, because I want to be able to build a Draconian builder, because I am a fan of pumping out builders and getting fortresses down for the extra resource accrual. That tends to be absolutely essential because the upkeep on lots of gold tier 3, tier 4s is very expensive. So you absolutely have to make sure that you have as much gold income in particular coming in. So I like to have a builder following each main high power 6 stack army. And I'll keep these 2 guys together until I have enough to make a 6 stack and a 6 stack for each of them to lead. Preferably, it'll be a hero, 1 or 2 Reanimators, 1 Banshee. Those are that's like kind of the core set of units. Okay, Lost Souls, so definitely no. I need the Reanimator. So those are kind of essential starting units that I want to have. But let's see. Other things I like about the Necromancer is that the de-emphasis on morale of troops. It's just one less thing I have to worry about, because when they're Gould, they just their morale, it's just less of a thing. They're not worried about terrain and stuff like that. I really like reanimating and raising dead. I like being able to make mistakes here and there, and then a unit dies and I'm able to greater or lesser reanimate them or raise corpse in the case of cadavers I already have going. It's just really nice insurance policy to have, and I just like the feeling of that. And just being able to, when I got into this game and I was playing with Theocrat a little early on, I really enjoyed the conversion, charming, dominating aspect of things. I really liked being able to get units to my side, to build my forces. They cost me nothing, right? Except, tactical savvy necessary to get them. And then when I discovered Necromancer, this was after I played the Eternal Lords campaign, and so got familiar with Necromancer and watched some of Hilliardin and Bob at Black Arrow Gaming, which are 2 YouTube channels. Oh, and Marcus Fearsome too is another high-level player, because Hilliardin and Marcus are both worth watching for high-level play, especially Hilliardin. And then Bob is good. Bob at Black Arrow Gaming is good for intro level and mid tier level strategy. But he doesn't play against human players, so you're not going to see the top of the top tier stuff. But I do enjoy his videos and have watched probably 200 hours of his. I've watched a lot of his campaigns over the last 4 years, and he's really conscientious with explaining his thinking, and he engages well with the people who comment on his videos and poses questions and answers questions, and it's just he puts out a nice video product. So it's definitely the number one channel I recommend for people newish to Age of Wonders 3. And I provide links to both Bob and Hiliadin's YouTube channels in my Steam Community Guide. And the link to the Steam Community Guide is in the description of this video, by the way. So that's where you can find it. And it's let me take a look at the guide and highlight some key points while we're waiting to hit turn 40. It's interesting I haven't been attacked yet. I'm kind of surprised. I wish I would be attacked. It would be a nice change of pace. It would be nice to get some experience on my units. But some of the difficulties with playing Necromancer. And I should, before I talk about that, I should talk about why Draconian. First, like the easier access to shrines, the more efficient shrine action is important because I like having the better mana production, because especially early game, Necromancer is very dependent on mana. So that's why I like the early mana boost, and you saw with the racial upgrade that the shrines are cheaper to build, which is nice. I also like where is it? Jeebus. Somebody already did that. This can be nice. This I love. The plus 10 casting points, very, very valuable for all the summoning we're doing. This, I don't tend to use flyers too much, so it's whatever. In between this and this, if I have a bunch of flyers, maybe this is useful, but otherwise it's totally this. For the production and research, easy peasy, easy choice. Yeah. So, but yeah, and Necromancer is heavily frost and blight damage with many of their units. And so playing a fire-based race is very useful because it opens up another damage channel, as I think mentioned earlier in this video. And that is very important. And it also means that, the undead and ghoul units tend to have spirit and fire weakness. So you can see the ghoul and undead, 60% weakness. And here, being undead comes with a 20% fire weakness, but the Draconian race, any Draconian units, which is mostly just your starting units, they get a little buff to that. So I like that it reduces the severity of the fire damage penalty that normally would be experienced. And depending on the units, depending on how much inherent fire protection they get, it can really help. It can get into protection territory rather than weakness. So that's why I like them, because they reduce some of the strength of the weaknesses of the Necromancer class. Turn 25, so we've got 15 turns left, and we're about to produce reanimators. I wonder how many turns it'll take to get Banshee, maybe 12. But I think that's probably what I'm going to do next. It'll probably be even more valuable than an additional level of necromancy, because while it's nice to do undead plague with one casting turn, I'm going to want to be able to summon banshees. It's a clear winner for me. So we'll be doing that. What are some of the challenges of playing as Necromancer? The lack of automatic healing is big, so you need to do the heal undead spell, which heroes have inherently. By the way, it'd be good to, so they have this inherently, they have this inherently. You can see those 2 damage channels. Oh, and the Draconian fast healing. So before you hit the Archlich Empire upgrade, before that happens, let's see. So what is this? 11. Good. So we will get this in time. Before you hit Archlich and these guys themselves become undead, because they're right now they're normal units, they're not undead, unlike the rest of their followers who are ghouls, and the stuff that you build tends to be undead. Because they're not yet undead, they can heal, and so the fast healing is also helpful early game associated with Draconian, which applies just to the leader. A little bit of frost weakness at the moment, but once he becomes Archlich and undead, this will go away because the Necromancers have that frost protection, and he's even in fire protection because he's not yet undead, which is useful since some of these other units can have fire weakness. Physical weakness sucks. I hate having halflings on my side, but hopefully there won't be so much melee action for them. But I mean, for ghouling, you have to get in their face and do melee stuff, so it really sucks. So I'm just going to reframe this as an opportunity. Oh, that's interesting. That's a nice little inherent feature of this particular hero, is that they start with Shadow Step, which is usually like a level 9 ability, I think. So that is interesting. So raise hope, heal undead, but the Shadow Step, that will help soften the blow of this a little bit. That's neat. I've never played with this hero early game before, so we'll have to see how that works. And yeah, maybe the lucky can be put to our advantage, though not in this terrain. I'm not going to get those lucky procs at all. So yeah, lack of automatic healing is hard. The lack of economic bonus because of the lack of morale. So I don't have Eureka moments. I don't have We Love the King days, to borrow the Civ language. So it makes it harder to support the Ghoul armies, but that's why it's so important to play destruction, specialization generally, well, not that, rather, what did I mean to say? I meant to say Shadowborn Adept for the lifesteal. Oh no, I did mean destruction because it's evil alignment. Because you do want to take over independent cities through conquest and ghouling them, migrating them to Draconian undead. Keep it going. Turn 28. So see, we're at 9 turns. We're gonna, by turn 40, we're gonna barely sneak in. Banshee at this painful plus 20 knowledge per turn. So this actually is going pretty fast. What are we at? We're at 30 minutes into this episode, but at least I'll be able to do all this pre-prep in the span of one episode. I'm going to be so glad when this is over. Although it is going to it's going to get slower and slower these turns as they get bigger and do more movement and do more battles. You can see that icon pop up occasionally. My poor FPS. I don't know if you probably can't see that, but yeah, my FPS is not super. I average around 30. Other stuff. Yeah, the fire and spirit weakness sucks, especially against certain sites, independent sites, or certain opponents. Ghoul units take higher physical damage because of lower defense. Let's see if I can show an example of that. So, Ghoul units, yeah, 20% spirit weakness inherent. And then for undead folks, the blight protection and frost protection is nice, but those weaknesses are unfortunate, and they tend to have lower defense and resistance. Yeah, 9 and 9, unfortunately. What else? And low population growth. That's the other thing. Border expansion and pop growth is slower for undead, unfortunately. So those are some of the things, but I don't mind those so much. I much prefer the advantages. In terms of my specializations, let's talk about that for a bit. I played around a bit, and I just really like Destruction Adept and Master plus Shadowborn Adept. And there's only a few things I actually use as a part of those specializations, but I still find them the most useful. And I should say that Water Adept can be useful if you're going to be facing machines or undead, and so sometimes I'm tempted to take Water Adept in lieu of Destruction Master or in lieu of Shadowborn Adept, depending on how I'm feeling, because Rot is Water Adept's 20 physical damage to a target machine or undead, weakens it for 5 turns, and the effect jumps to 3 other machines or enemy undead units nearby, which is super useful, especially against dreadnoughts, which are a pain in the ass to deal with. So that is, it can be tempting to have Water Adept, but I just keep coming back to the other 3. So why Destruction Adept? It's mostly for hasty plunder, because with this particular map setting, when you're against 5 enemy AI and they're everywhere on the map, the way I play this style is that I can take and hold cities close to my capital and keep them safe. But once I am spread out and spread thin, I don't keep units in those cities. It's just kind of too costly. I need to put all my upkeep towards my tier 3, tier 4 stacks of gold units. And so I just turn city. So I prefer Hasty Plunder because it allows you to plunder cities in 2 turns, which means you can park there for 1 turn, it'll be plundered, and then you can get on your way onto the next. And so I just prefer to raise cities in my wake once I'm into enemy territory. That way they can't recapture it, because I know I can't defend the cities, I can't hold them, so I might as well raise them to the ground. So it's the most important ability empire upgrade that comes from a specialization for me. Number 1 for this strategy by far. Scorched Earth is situational, but you have to spend casting points to get it up to speed on a city. So if there's a really valuable city that you might lose, but you really want to keep it alive so you can pump valuable units out of it or whatever, Scorched Earth may situationally be useful, but it's painful not to be able to spend those casting points summoning units, because you should always, always, always be summoning units if you can afford the mana, and if your casting points don't need to be saved for crucial battles that turn. So, because you always want to start summoning Lost Souls from the beginning, and then Banshees as soon as they become available, and then after Banshees are available, then it'll be Dread Reapers, and then you're summoning Dread Reapers the rest of the game. Maybe potentially summoning other tier 3, tier 4 units if you get them as a gift from defeating a site, like summoning certain dragons, for example, could be worthwhile. Obsidian dragons. Destruction Master, let's talk about that specialization. Wreck, first of all, 100% blight, I think, and 100% physical weakness, so it's a single target spell that is not great when you're facing a large number of undead or machine units, but it is great when you're facing a small number, because it really weakens one single unit. And I like Wreck paired with Disintegrate because, well, let's talk about Disintegrate. So it's another part of Destruction Master. It's a combat spell that attempts to kill the unit outright from the map. Just disappear it. And it's a casting strength of 15 physical, so that's what it's what the chance roll is up against. And it's a wonderful counter to tier 4s and enemy heroes, this disintegrate. And if it doesn't succeed at totally wiping them out, it still does 25 physical damage, which is pretty substantial. And if you have storm magic, which I'll talk about in a bit, it increases that damage by an additional 50%, I believe. Now, the neat synergy is if you cast Wreck on a unit, so it's 100% weak, 100% weaker to physical, then I believe it's the case that Disintegrate, because it checks against physical, if you're 100% weak to physical, Disintegrate will 100% work. So unless they dispel that Wreck, you can cast Wreck on an enemy hero, and then the next turn Disintegrate them for a guaranteed kill, unless they have some physical buffs from like the Silver Aegis Ring, the 40% physical protection, which is what I got picked up 2 of them, maybe even 3 of them. The last game I played where I waited the 20 turns, that was so nice to make me physically beefier. But unless they have that, or they're a Dreadnought and they get the 20% toughness buff, so that might not be 100% disintegrate chance, but that's just a wonderful combination. And with Storm Magic, increases damage of direct combat spells by 50%, which will synergize with your Death Ray, which you have from the beginning of the game, for a little added bonus, or of course Disintegrate. So Destruction Master is nice for its ability to kill really annoying units who might be, say, spellcasting in the middle of the battle, and you need to eliminate them so that you can get your Necromancer global battlefield spells up and not have them disjuncted. But sometimes, I could see swapping out Destruction Master for Water Adept if you're worried about dealing with machines, which I'm going to be facing this Dreadnought, this Dwarf Dreadnought, and it is, especially when you're trying to siege a city and they've got, 5 Juggernauts and just so many machines. Sometimes it's nice to have that Rot be able to bounce and weaken a ton of units at a time. So I'll have to do an upcoming campaign where I use Water Adept, I think. And lastly, Shadowborn Adept. Embrace Darkness is why I get it. It's allow you to build or summon units in a given city. So you apply it to a given city that you own, including what's their dwelling cities, which is really neat. And so anything summoned or produced in that city has lifesteal, has the first level of lifesteal, which is really, really nice. So those units are a little bit tankier, especially if they're designed to be melee. And so I like to summon Dread Reapers and Banshees in a city that has Embrace Darkness cast on it, so that the life drain that's native to the Dread Reapers gets bumped up to a greater life drain, which is absolutely insane survivability for them in that case. And it's also, I'm generally not summoning Banshees in cities. I'm generally summoning Banshees early game and adding them to the stacks where the leaders are. So I don't usually have a chance to be summoning them in cities, but so it is. And then dwelling T4s, Lords of the Deep, Giants, Dragons, having them with lifesteal is really nice. Especially Lords of the Deep. That worked really well during my last campaign. The only other thing with Shadowborn Adept is Black Lightning. It can let you lower the resistance and spirit protection of enemies, allowing you to more easily ghoul curse living units, which can be very valuable. Okay. 4 turns away from this. 7 turns away from turn 40. I am so interested to see what this game is going to be like after 40 turns of waiting. Oh my gosh. I have to really be careful about roaming units too. Can't leave the capital undefended because the roaming units are going to be really powerful at this stage of the game. I can't have a latency period. I can't, be safe for the first 10 or 12 turns like it would be if you're starting on turn 1. I'm gonna have to watch out for roamings from the start, and the additional cities I capture are also going to be susceptible to big cosmic events, like invasion of the trolls or invasion of the penguins, that stuff. See, with my whole strategy in that kind of hasty plunder strategy, I don't keep garrisons in my cities, certainly not ones that can ward off anything but the most low-key of an assault. Because I'm starting so late, and these cosmic events are bound to happen, and the roaming bands, roaming independents are going to be that much more powerful. I may have to garrison my cities, which is going to slow me down. But it'll be interesting. It'll force me to adapt in ways that I'm not used to when playing this style. But yeah, Black Lightning, if you get it early enough, which a lot of times it's not a priority upgrade that you're getting, but if you do get it and you're still in the midst of doing a lot of ghouling, it's just one additional way besides stiffen limbs to make it easier to ghoul a particularly juicy tier 3 or tier 4 unit that you want. So those are some of my thoughts on specializations. In terms of unit production priorities, when I'm playing 1v7, I almost never build units for my cities. Instead, I'm ghouling, right? So I'll build reanimators for my cities. That's about it. If I'm cash rich, I may build infrastructure up enough to produce flyers, because with the Vampiric Hunger upgrade, and especially if you got Embrace Darkness cast on the city where you're building them, you can have greater life-stealing flyers. And flyers are pretty dandy units. They're pretty nice. They get those infantry bonuses too. But generally, it's just reanimators being produced from cities, and I generally build a lot of them because I need at least one at every single main stack. Whether it has a hero or leader in it or not, you need them because they keep the cadaver or two alive. They can, once you get the Healers of the Undead ability, which is also a really essential Empire upgrade for early mid-game, they also get lesser reanimate undead, so they can raise each other. Reanimators are raising reanimators if there are two in the same army, which is always nice to have. Oof. That's not good. But they can also raise any other support units. Because they can't, lesser doesn't work on tier 3s or tier 4s, but it does work on tier 1 or tier 2. And generally, the armies I will have tier 2 supports. I'll have at least 2 in every main 6-unit stack. But other than that, it's going to be all tier 3s or tier 4s. Because that's, if you're going to be going into a site, you want to have your 6 strongest units. You don't want to have a large number of crappier tier 1s and tier 2s because they just die too easily, especially if you're facing high damage opponents like Dreadnoughts. Their area of effect, high damage spells. So it's better to have tier 3s and tier 4s that have a bunch of champion levels and are extremely tanky. Like in this last series I played, I had like 5 or 6 champion 6 units, and I even had 1 champion 7 unit, which is the highest I've ever gotten. And in that game, I won in the 70s, I think. I forget what turn it was. But man, these turns are taking a bit longer. Heptatopia. Keep it rolling. Getting closer, getting closer. Yeah, so in terms of unit production priorities, reanimators out of the cap, maybe in a secondary city, possibly flyers, but usually not. Unit summoning priorities, talked about that already. Lost Souls, then Banshees, then Dread Reapers, and then if you have strategic spells for summoning dragons or certain elementals, that might be worth it. Dwellings, this is worth talking about. Some dwellings are really valuable to capture, and some are less valuable. If you're going to be facing AIs that deal fire damage, which we will, we've got some dwarves, we've got some draconians, we've got some dreadnoughts that deal fire damage, all that we're going to have to face, then merfolk, dragons, fae, and giants are valuable dwellings to build strong countering units. Giants, fire giants with fire protection will be a little less when they're undead, but still pretty tanky. Fae have, especially if I'm building Fae units, it's just Nightshade Fairies, and they have, I think, 100% fire protection. Of course, if they're Gould, it'll be a little less, but definitely really strong. Dragons, building fire dragons, they can't be Gould, they'll never be undead. You won't be able to heal them. So that you have to kind of give them time to heal on their own, or pair them with Gould units that happen to have healing alive units. But that can situationally be good. And then probably my favorite tier 4 to build out of a dwelling is Lords of the Deep from the Merfolk dwelling. I'm really hopeful that I'm close to a Merfolk dwelling on this map. Probably am not, but that would really be lovely, because in my last game where I waited 20 turns before acting, it was the first, I think, dwelling I ran into. And so I got Lords of the Deep going ASAP, and that was so essential, because they have that, oh, let race governance level up. Nope, that's fine. Let's see, can I pull it up? I should pull it up. Did I spell it wrong? Or is it Lord of the Deep? Lord of the Deep, sorry. Okay, so slip away. So one mechanism to heal if they're by themselves. They have a little shock damage, which is great for being anti-machine, which we will be facing a powerful dreadnought here. Projectile reflection, especially if you get them up high level, they can just make hell for support units trying to attack them. Pikemen, first strike, polearm, pike square, just super tanky on defense. There is some frost weakness, but that's wiped out when they're Gould. And their fire protection, which is taken down a little bit when they're Gould, but the fire protection is also really valuable for dealing with fire folks. Can we see? Good. Okay. 8+ hit points every level, super valuable, even 16 in elite. And then they get total awareness, so they can't be flanked, and then static shield. They're just amazing once they get leveled up. Just amazing units, and really, really great. I like to have one in every army, sometimes two, if I can. Just super, super useful. So I hope I will be able to get some of those this game, but we'll see. Yeah. So that's good for countering fire. I'm also going to be facing some AIs that deal shock. That the Draconian Sorcerer is going to have stunning touch on their range units, including area of effect, the fire spell that the whatevers have. They can stun. Super, super annoying to deal with. It's helpful to have Banshees and Dread Reapers, because being incorporeal, they cannot get stunned, so they ended up being super, super important when I was facing off against the Sorcerer army stacks in my last campaign. And so when dealing with shock damage, Archons, because a lot of them are incorporeal, and they are valuable dwellings to acquire. Yay! Okay, so do I work towards? I think I'm going to hold off on this, because I don't do bone collectors, though I might try and do some more of that, because I need that demolish for dealing with the dreadnought, but I don't like them as a unit as much. Okay, 3 turns. So do I want to start getting towards 60 casting points for this? Or do I want to do Vampiric Hunger? You know, I'm leaning here, I think. Yeah, I think Vampiric Hunger being up will be pretty useful. Interesting. How much I have there. Yeah, okay. Keep it rolling. So we're getting closer. We're at minute 50. God. That's interesting. So it's like to go 40 turns, it's like a minute and 10 seconds per turn on average. Well, it'll be a little longer actually since we got 3 more to go, but anywho. Yeah, and with Archon Revenant, Wraith Kings, they're flying floating, so I can pair them with pure flying or floating stacks, and they can do all the healing. And they also have native lifesteal, which can stack to greater lifesteal if you got Embrace Darkness on it. They have 60% physical protection, so they're like Banshees, but better in some ways, in that they can actually heal other units. They can throw Curse at gold rank, which is really great. So that's something I failed to use last game once I got an Archon Revenant City, but I'm going to try and, if I meet one early, I'm going to start pumping out Wraith Kings for that. Giants, I think I was building Fire Giants last time, but I might want to build Stone Giants instead, because the ability to do Demolisher damage at range, I think, might be even more important than the fire protection that the Fire Giants have. So I think I'm going to be building Stone Giants if I come across a Giants dwelling early. Yeah. And if I get Fade, I'll start pumping out Nightshade Fairies, since they're excellent high damage ranged units. And Nightshade Fairies' only weakness usually is the 40% blight weakness, but that's entirely removed. It goes to 60% blight protection when they're ghouled, because undead are 100% blight protected. So that is some thoughts on dwelling priorities. What about early game Empire and spell research priorities? This is useful since we're going to be thinking about this. Whispers of the Fallen, important to help with your research. It's going to be harder for me if I meet Crimson Star. What is the evil alignment? Yeah, could use that later. So I'm going to be going for evil alignment. But Whispers of the Fallen can be good because it helps with early research, but if I'm meeting my opponents, they can just jump up. That's going to suck. Stiffen Limbs. I have Stiffen Limbs research. Okay. I do already have Undead Plague. Animate Rune. That's something else too. I have to, even if I want to hold certain cities, I have to get in the habit of hasty plundering them and then animating them. Although I want to be using those casting spells for summons, so I don't know if that's a viable strategy, actually. Wait, I didn't see what I meant to say. So let's see. No, it appears I don't. Okay. So Stiffen Limbs is something I will. What do I know? I definitely have Stiffen Limbs. Yeah. Okay. That makes more sense. Desecration is nice too. It's nice to start with. But the Stiffen Limbs is important. I already have that. Shrines of Unlife. We'll be getting that soon. Necromancy points. Healers of the Dead, super essential. Well, I want it. As soon as that appears, I'm beelining for that. Empire upgrade. Undead Plague, I already have researched. Dark Ritual is nice if you need to raise some impromptu defenders. So it's not as super essential as some of the other stuff, but I'll want to get it. But those are the kind of early game Empire and spell research priorities. So I'm already pretty well on my way to some of those. Mid-game Empire and spell research priorities, that's going to be the Vampiric Hunger, which I'm already working on. Harbingers of Death to turn my heroes into Archliches, which as soon as that appears, I'm going to beeline for that. Scourge of Undead. It's a very cost-effective spell that spawns powerful undead units each turn. That's definitely a late game. It's very expensive to research it. Enemy of the Faith. Once my opponents have met me, they're going to disjunct it. Same with Power of Ritual. Damnation is nice, but I'd have to spend casting points on damnationing a given city. But I'd rather be spending that on summons. So, Necromancer, hero ability and stats upgrade path. Definitely want to talk about this. In my guide, I have a link to a Google spreadsheet where that features not only key item forge items to be forging, given this strategy, but it also has recommended ability upgrade paths for every single class, not just Necromancer. But as far as Necromancer goes, Lesser Reanimate Undead, Lifesteal and Throw Curse, all essential. Get that. I save points at level 2 and get that stuff at level 3. Usually protection from light at level 4. It's for a little bit of the spirit and fire protection, especially that fire protection helps everybody involved. Turn 39, we're almost there, y'all. So sometimes I might consider swapping this out. Banally good for dealing with animals can be good, or a little bit of stats upgrade instead. But it kind of depends on what I'm going to be facing in terms of independent sites. Devour until you're an Archlich. You can't heal yourself with your Heal Undead spell. Super weird. So you got to Devour to keep your health up. It's always essential. Save at level 6. At level 7, Greater Reanimate Undead, super important. Super important. And Energy Drain. I've played around with this, but Energy Drain is wonderful if you can get it to proc rooting enemies in place. So once you're trying to ghoul units, super nice to root them in place by removing their movement. And even if you're just trying to keep yourself safe or beat difficult enemies, Energy Drain is wonderful. So I'm now prioritizing it at level 7 and save points to make that happen. I save points at level 8, and then at level 9, this is where the fun begins with Inflict Ghoul Curse and Inflict Despair. Inflict Despair, if you can do it enough, and stack the 20%. Spirit weaknesses, you can get them to 100% spirit weakness, which guarantees, 100% guarantees a successful Inflict Ghoul Curse. And that's how you build your army. Level 10, I get a little bit of stats. Level 11, I prioritize Undying just because I hate to have my leader go back to the void. Super inefficient. Just really throws a wrench in things. Sometimes I will restart games if I lose a hero or a leader because you just don't want to do it. And Undying gives you a get out of jail free card, generally, with that. So I prioritize Undying. And then from level 12 onward, I try and get Inflict Curse so that my melee and ranged can also proc Cursed. Though usually I can Inflict Curse through my Reanimator, so it's a little less important for my heroes to have that. But Inflict Curse is nice. Shadow Step is nice to give you a little bit more flexibility to save you from having to rely on that Undying, and to also help you get a clutch movement change in so that you can get a ghoul off that you want to do, for example. And then Invoke Death is a wonderful nuke, which usually I can save until like level 14 or so, but if my opponents have a really big advantage, I may need it to deal with high HP units. So, we are here, turn 40, finally. God, what is it? A whole hour. This episode was a whole hour of just waiting and me sharing lots of information, which if for some reason you're still listening to me here, hopefully you found this info useful, but we're finally at turn 40, so I'm going to save here before I start to move and everything. So in episode 3, where the fun begins, I will start to move on my own turn 40, whereas my opponents already have an advantage. So thanks for bearing with me, and I will see you in episode 3.